You know, there's a conversation, I'm sure Tim Daniels has had it many times over his career. Tim's here with us from Healthgage. You know, I don't know if people realize, or maybe we haven't. First of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, buon anno, buon
Hello.
Natale.
Bon Natale. Let me just jump right in with this. You know, I've often been speaking of a book. I think it would be. I'm sure there's been books written about opportunities missed. And I think you and I even had this conversation. Now that I think about it, Tim, we were talking about like in Tim's other life before he became a mining mogul and an investor in Healthgage. You basically funded people's dreams in a way. I mean, you were a guy that was helping fund projects. And what I asked you was, how many times in your life / career as an investor did you like pass on something? I remember now because you told me the story of your buddy and the pharmacies. So you must have 1,000 stories like the guy that didn't, like we should have been, we interviewed somebody 10 years ago about Bitcoin. All we had to do was throw $1,000 at the guy and I'd be living next door to you in Florence right now.
So, you know, here's the kind of genius I am. Some years ago, as I said, in a past life, when I was funding projects, one of my business partners out of the Seattle area came to me with this project, and I looked at the prospectus, and I said, I don't get it. These guys, they have a small little business. They have no expertise in what they're doing. There's no barrier of entry for others to get into the business. They're not vertically integrated, meaning, you know, they're just a retail shop. They don't own upstream or downstream from themselves. I said, I don't get it. I pass on this one. It was a little company called Starbucks. And,
of course.
And the rest is history.
And,
yeah,
of course.
And you know what? Yeah, this is the way it goes. You know, the number of projects that I've looked at and passed because I was such a genius and thought that, hey, this makes absolutely no good business sense, only for those businesses to then go on to being major successes. But hey, this is.
And what is it about us that you tell that Starbucks story, and I almost like hearing it. Like I'm not alone, you know. Even the smartest among us can relate to missed opportunity.
But Timmy, you must have seen that hundreds of times, not just with yourself, but other people that you know in that world. I don't want to get into it now, but there was a great story that Tim told me at breakfast that day about a friend of yours and actually brought you along. This was fairly recently, and said, what do you think, Tim? And actually said, here, you can buy some of this company. You're like, nah, no, I'll pass. And now that's like multiples of multiples.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's still a private company. And last year, he came here to Italy to visit me just before you did, Howard. Actually, just 2 days after you did. And, you know, was presenting some of the numbers from the business I passed on. Last year, they did about $6 billion in revenue, 240 million net profit, debt-free, et cetera. So I was throwing up.
Well, listen, if Fred and I ever take this public, we're using you to do the VC, the first round of funding. I don't even know what I just said. Listen, man, it's been a while. We haven't talked about the watch. We haven't talked about anything. First of all, for everyone, you're not alone. I hope I'm not going to talk out of school, but everyone we know, when I left Italy on the 15th of November, I landed, and I think I shared this with you, that my daughter, my eldest daughter, texted me as the plane landed, she had COVID, Delta, the old school COVID. At the time, I went on the air the next week and I said, you know, this is the first person that Fred and I even know personally, my kid, that's had COVID. And since then, everyone's had COVID, including you guys.
Yeah,
So
I got it. So, you know, we did the brilliant thing. We had about 15 people over for Christmas, and guess what happened on Boxing Day? We were all positive. So fortunately for me, and fortunately for all of us, it was a short-lived and non-eventful experience. Had it for about 2 days. It felt like a mild cold. the symptoms that were somewhat different from a typical cold was that I had a little bit of a night chill for 2 nights, I think, and for the first time since I think I was a teenager, I slept for like 12 hours a day for like 3 days. So, and
Nice.
that just doesn't happen to me. And so with those symptoms, we went to one of the local pharmacies and got ourselves tested, and we were all positive. Fortunately, within like 2 days, it all passed, and it was all good once again.
Did you? Is that the second time you've had COVID?
No, that's the first time.
Oh, that was the first time.
that I
Okay,
know
I'm
of.
mixing you up with somebody else. Okay.
And did you do like when you and I were together there in Florence, we went to a pharmacy for a rapid test. It turned out I couldn't use it, but here in Toronto right now,
Yeah.
there's some people, including me, I've got some self-testing kits, which are okay, but it's really difficult to get a test. What's it like in Florence?
It is also, it's a gong show. It's, complete circus. Very, very difficult. All the centers that you would have used while you were here, Howard, getting tested, they're all backlogged 3-4 weeks. They're not taking new reservations. You can go as a walk-up patient, and if you didn't have COVID before you walked up, you do have to leave because there's hundreds of people lined up, and they're all there for the same reason because they think they're positive, and the lineups are hours long. But that's what we had to do because you see, the way the process works here is, and it's very convoluted. How long you're supposed to lock down for
Right.
is a function of whether or not you've had 0, 1, 2, or 3 vaccinations, whether you yourself have tested positive or you were in close proximity to someone else who tested positive.
Yeah, same
whether
here.
it's a Wednesday and you were wearing a blue shirt or,
Timmy, it's
completely crazy.
go ahead, Freddie.
No, what's interesting through this too is when you read around, so to speak, everybody is blaming their local politician
Right.
for access to tests and testing, and it's worldwide now, like everywhere. It's the same thing. So you can look at Doug Ford or or Justin Trudeau and say, yeah, what are they? They've done it all wrong. When it's like, even in the States, a lot of places where they had lots of testing through the first wave and second wave. It's a universal problem right now, or it's a universal strategy now to not test everyone, so to speak.
It is. I mean, through my daily conversations, I'm speaking with people on the 4 corners of the earth, and it's the same situation everywhere. There's not enough, test kits to go around. The lineups are hours and hours long. A lot of governments are just, kind of throwing up their hands and saying, no mask we give. So now you can even do, home rapid test, and that's good enough. Whereas a month ago, it had to be a PCR test done at a laboratory and so on. So,
but what I wanted to say too, but what's universal, because I'm looking at an article here from Chicago, and you're talking to people in Australia. You live in Italy, and we live in Canada. Everyone universally, depending on what the guidelines are in terms of testing after exposure, isolation, quarantine, if you've had 3 boosters, it's so confusing. But I think the universal, the conventional wisdom now is, if you have symptoms, you've got COVID. You don't need to go get tested. And if you have symptoms, within a few days, you're going to be probably fine. You're 60 or 61. You're in good shape. We're in our 60s. We've been triple vaxxed. I know you've been double vaxxed.
Yeah.
So
Double vaxxed.
So my only thing about COVID is I'm going away at the end of the month, actually first week of March, or February, I should say. If I get it, I want to get it now. I don't want to get it the day I'm traveling so that my traveling isn't impacted.
Right, exactly.
I'm also worried too, and I'll maybe get into this when you're not on the show, but my older brother, Steven, he's like the COVID master because he's done a lot of television productions and having to get people tested. He says the biggest concern I would have in the States is that if I go on the day I'm coming home and I test positive, well, then I'm stuck there for another 5 or 7 days until I can get a negative test and then get back on the plane.
That's right.
Isn't that horrible?
No.
And that's assuming, though, that on that day that you want to get tested, that you actually can, because everywhere at this moment are
Yeah.
backlogged, weeks at a time. What we ended up doing here, believe it or not, they still have home doctors here in Italy, believe it or not, where, a doctor with their little black bag comes to
Yeah.
your house and gives you
Yeah.
your checkup and so on. We still have that old school option available to us. So in this case, when we did our first test and we were positive, we had to go to a government affiliated pharmacy so that our test was official. So it went into the government record bank. And the reason why that's important is because then that will delay your need for the booster vaccine by 6 months. Because the research is showing that getting the Omicron is maybe even better than having the booster in terms of
Mhm.
your immunity. And
Right.
so the government here has come to the conclusion that, 2 vaccines plus Omicron equals a booster. So,
Right.
so now
Oh.
because of that, I was scheduled to have my booster this month,
Mm.
but now because I just went through Omicron, I don't have to have my booster until June or July.
Okay.
And am probably better off because of that. So that's the way it works. But the problem is that in the meantime, how do you get that official positive test? Well, in our case, we had to go stand in line and with all these sickies that were coughing all over us for a couple hours,
Mm.
to get that vaccine.
Well,
Or sorry, to get that test.
to your point though, like we've already booked our test to go to the States. But in the States, like in Palm Springs where we're going,
Mhm.
it's not anywhere near as difficult to get a test to come home. It's just expensive. I know, listen, man, I know we've talked a lot. This has been a great conversation, and I think very interesting for people that are like me, like a lot of people wondering what are the protocols? Is it different in Italy? And I like what you said there, Freddie, in terms of it's easy for us to sit here in Ontario and go, Doug Ford screwed it up, but everywhere, there's
Yes.
every political,
Mhm.
anyone in politics in the world is getting the same shit. Although when you describe politics in Italy to me, it's always a gong show there anyway.
It is, it really.
So this isn't much different.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right now, I think that we all need to, take a deep breath, cut our politicians a little bit of slack, and understand that this is a wave that we're going through, and it's happening globally.
Yeah.
And so whether you were, in Toronto today, in Florence, Italy, or on the moon, you're going to run into basically the same sort of scenario
Okay.
here and now. This is just the reality that we're
And I know this conversation had almost nothing to do with Healthgage, except to say that Healthgage brings us Tim Daniels, healthgage.com, the promo code. I don't know if you've been seeing some of the notes that I've been sending Blake, but our audience is buying this watch. They're figuring it out. We got Fred on tech support. He's trying to figure some stuff out.
All good. There,
Is it
you
all
want
good
to talk
now?
about tech support?
Yeah, what happened?
One email was almost immediately answered. Again, the name's off the top of my head. I don't have right now, but it was fixed within a couple hours.
excellent.
I got a response on exactly what to do.
So because what was happening is because one of the elements of the watch that I love and that we've talked about is the fact that you can get the information on your app and you sync the app, but you were just having trouble, Freddie, to reset the watch.
Well, I had my issue was, and I'll tell you because maybe other people would have it. It told me the app, the time was wrong on my watch, and then when I went to the app, it said the beta had expired. Okay, whatever that was, and then I fixed it through the proper instructions from Randy and Amir.
Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this was just a challenge. I know we didn't really get into too much, but listen, go to healthgage.com. Tim Daniels is the guy. Are you going to still be good for an hour from now?
I am, sure.
You sure? Okay. Well, we'll catch up. All my best to you, my friend. Thanks. That was great.
And to you guys too. Cheers.
That's Tim Daniels, healthgage.com, for all your Healthgage needs. Healthgage, by the way, and we can't get into it now because we're out of time, but just also is working on, and we'll talk about this next time, some self-test technology. It's going to make it a lot easier for all of us. And we'll explain. We've talked about it a little bit, but we'll get into it next time. Thanks, Timmy.
Cheers, guys.